Once, a very long time ago, the world was full of people. They lived in towns and cities and their families grew bigger and bigger. But as more people filled the earth, they started to forget about God. They did not listen to His words or try to live in a way that was good and kind. Instead, many people began to do bad things. They were mean to each other, they fought a lot, and they only thought about themselves. Their hearts were filled with unkind thoughts and their actions were not pleasing to God. He looked down from heaven and saw all the trouble and sadness that was spreading across the land like a dark cloud. God's heart was very heavy. He felt a deep sadness when he saw how far people had moved away from His love and His ways. It was not the world He had wanted when He created it. The beauty and goodness He had intended were being covered up by selfishness and anger. He saw that the thoughts of people were only on bad things all the time. It was as if a beautiful garden had become overgrown with weeds that choked out all the lovely flowers. This great sadness made God decide that He had to do something. He could not let the world continue on this path where everyone was hurting each other and forgetting what it meant to be good. This was a very difficult decision for God to make. He loved the people He had created, but their choices were breaking His heart and ruining the wonderful world He had made for them. He saw that the wickedness had grown so large that it was like a terrible sickness with no cure. So God decided that He would have to wash the world clean. He planned to send a great flood, a rain so big and powerful that it would cover the whole earth with water. This would be a way to start over, to give the world a fresh, clean beginning. It was a very serious and sad plan, born from a place of deep disappointment. But even in His great sadness, God did not want to destroy everything. He looked carefully across the whole earth, searching for someone who was different. He searched for a person who still remembered Him, who still tried to live a good life, and who still had a kind heart. In the middle of all the noise and the anger and the selfishness, God was looking for a single spark of goodness. He did not want to give up on His creation completely. He hoped to find just one person, one family, who could be saved from the great flood and help to start the world anew. His eyes scanned every corner of the land, looking for that one special person. Among all the people on the earth, God found one man who was different. His name was Noah. Noah was a good man who lived a righteous life. This meant that he tried his best every single day to do what was right and to follow God's ways. While others around him were busy with their own selfish plans, Noah talked to God and listened to Him. He was a man who walked with God. This doesn't mean they went for walks side by side like friends, but it means Noah kept God close in his heart and in his thoughts. He chose love and kindness when others chose anger and hate. He stood out like a bright light in a very dark place. God saw Noah's good heart and was pleased with him. In a world full of people who had forgotten Him, Noah remembered. He taught his family to be good and kind as well. Noah had a wife, and he had 3 sons. Their names were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. His sons also had wives. They were a family that tried to live peacefully and honorably. God knew that Noah was the right person to trust with a very important, very big task. Noah's faithfulness was like a steady rock in a sea of chaos, and it was this steadiness that caught God's loving attention. He was the one person God could count on to listen and obey. So God spoke to Noah. He told Noah about his sadness and his plan to wash the world clean with a great flood. God said, "I have seen how much trouble is on the earth. The time has come for me to put an end to all people because the earth is filled with their bad ways. I am going to send a flood of waters to cover the whole world." This must have been very frightening news for Noah to hear. The idea of a flood so big that it would cover everything, even the tallest mountains, was something no one could imagine. It was a message of great destruction and a world-changing event. But God also gave Noah a message of hope. He told Noah not to be afraid because He was going to save him and his family. God said, "But I will make a special promise with you, Noah. You will be safe." God chose Noah not just to save him but to give the world a new start through him. Noah was a bridge between the old sad world and a new clean world to come. God explained that Noah would have a very important job to do, a job that would require great faith and hard work. He had to trust God completely, even when the plan seemed impossible and strange to everyone else. God gave Noah a very specific set of instructions. He did not just say, "Build a boat." He told Noah exactly what to do. God said, "I want you to build an ark for yourself. Make it out of gopher wood." An ark is a huge boat, bigger than any boat anyone had ever seen before. It was not designed for sailing or steering, but for floating. It was meant to be a safe house on the water. God told Noah the exact size it needed to be. It had to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. A cubit was a measurement they used back then, about the length from a man's elbow to the tip of his fingers. The ark needed to be strong enough to survive a giant flood, so God told Noah how to build it to be waterproof. He said, "Cover it with pitch, inside and out." Pitch is a sticky, black tar-like substance that would seal all the cracks in the wood. This would stop any water from leaking inside the giant boat. The ark was to have a roof, and it needed to have a door in its side. God also told Noah to build 3 different levels, or decks, inside the ark. This would create a lot of space, like a 3-story floating house. It was a massive and detailed building project, unlike anything ever attempted before. Then God told Noah about the passengers who would be on the ark with his family. It wasn't just for Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives. God had a plan to save the animals too. He said, "You are to bring into the ark 2 of every kind of living creature, a male and a female, to keep them alive with you." This meant every kind of bird that flies in the sky, every kind of animal that walks on the land, and every kind of creature that creeps along the ground. They were to come in pairs so that after the flood they could have babies and fill the earth with animals once again. God also told Noah to gather food, a lot of food. He would need enough food for his family and for all the different animals that would be living on the ark. No one knew how long they would be inside, so they had to be prepared. God said, "Take with you every kind of food that is eaten and store it up. It will be food for you and for them." This was another huge task. Imagine trying to collect enough grain, fruit, and hay to feed hundreds and hundreds of animals for a very long time. Noah listened to everything God said, and the Bible tells us Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So Noah and his sons began the enormous task of building the ark. They went out to find the gopher wood that God had told them to use. They had to cut down many, many tall trees. Then, they had to cut the trees into long, straight planks of wood. This was very hard work. There were no power saws or big machines back then. They had to do everything by hand, using simple tools like axes and saws. Day after day, week after week, and year after year, Noah and his family worked. They cut the wood, shaped it, and began to fit the giant pieces together to form the frame of the ark. It was a slow and steady process. As the ark started to take shape, people from the nearby towns probably came to watch. They must have thought Noah was very strange. He was building a gigantic boat in the middle of dry land, far away from any ocean. They likely laughed at him and made fun of him. "Why are you building that silly thing, Noah?" they might have asked. "There is no water here." Noah would tell them what God had said. He warned them that a great flood was coming and that they should change their ways. But the people did not listen. They continued with their selfish lives and thought Noah was a foolish old man. Despite the laughter and the mean words, Noah did not stop. He had faith in God. He believed God's promise and he kept on working. He and his sons measured the wood carefully, just as God had instructed. They built the lower deck, then the middle deck, and then the upper deck. They built rooms and stalls inside for all the animals. They built a big door in the side and a roof to cover the very top. The ark grew bigger and bigger each day, a giant wooden structure standing tall on the plain. It was a symbol of Noah's incredible obedience and trust in God's word, even when no one else understood. Finally, after many long years of hard work, the ark was finished. It was an amazing sight, a massive vessel ready for its important journey. They had followed all of God's instructions perfectly. They coated the entire ark, inside and out, with the sticky black pitch to make sure it was completely waterproof. They also gathered and stored all the food they would need. There were huge piles of grains, seeds, dried fruits, and hay packed carefully into the storage rooms. Noah, his family, and the great ark stood ready. They had done their part. Now they waited for God to do his. When the giant ark was finally complete, something incredible began to happen. The animals started to arrive. God did not tell Noah to go out and hunt for all the creatures of the world. Instead, God made the animals come to Noah. From the forests, the jungles, the mountains, and the plains they came. Big animals like elephants and giraffes walked slowly toward the ark. Smaller animals like rabbits and squirrels scampered along. All the different kinds of creatures that live on the land and fly in the air were on the move. It must have been an amazing parade of life, all heading to one single place. They came in pairs, just as God had commanded. For every kind of animal, there was a male and a female. 2 lions, a male and a female. 2 monkeys, a male and a female. 2 bears, a male and a female. For some of the animals, the ones that were considered clean, God told Noah to bring 7 pairs of each. This was so there would be animals for sacrifices to worship God after the flood was over. The sky filled with birds of every color, flying in flocks towards the ark. The ground rumbled with the sound of hooves and paws. It was a peaceful procession. The lion walked near the lamb, all guided by God's unseen hand. Noah and his family stood by the great door of the ark and watched in wonder. They opened the ramp and guided the animals inside. They led them to the special rooms and stalls that they had built for them. Imagine the sounds and the smells as the ark began to fill up with creatures great and small. There were chirps, roars, squeaks and growls, all mixing together inside the enormous wooden structure. Noah and his sons carefully organized them, making sure each pair had its place. They worked together to settle all of their new passengers for the long journey ahead. It was a busy and noisy time inside the floating zoo. When the very last animal had walked up the ramp and into the ark, Noah and his family went inside too. His wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their 3 wives, all entered the ark. They were a family of 8 people, surrounded by a world of animals. They were ready. They had done everything God had asked them to do. They had built the ark, gathered the food, and welcomed the animals. As they stood inside and looked out the door one last time, they saw the world they had always known. Then, something amazing happened. The great door of the ark began to close, but it was not Noah who closed it. God himself shut the door, sealing them safely inside. For 7 days, Noah's family and all the animals waited inside the ark. Outside, the world continued as it always had. The sun rose and set, people went about their business, not knowing what was about to happen. They had seen the animals go into the ark, and they had seen Noah and his family go inside. They had seen the huge door shut tight, but still, they did not believe. They probably thought it was the strangest thing they had ever seen. They had no idea that their time to change their ways was over. Inside the ark there was a quiet feeling of waiting, a sense of something big about to begin. Then, on the 7th day, it started. The sky, which had been clear, began to fill with dark, heavy clouds. A small drop of rain fell. Then another, and another. Soon, the drops turned into a steady shower, and the shower turned into a heavy downpour. But this was no ordinary rainstorm. The Bible says that on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. This means that water did not just come from the sky, it also came rushing up from under the ground. Water was coming from everywhere, pouring down and gushing up with incredible force. The rain fell without stopping. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That is more than a month of continuous heavy rain. The water level rose higher and higher. At first it made puddles, then streams, then rivers. Soon, the rivers overflowed their banks and the water covered the fields and the towns. The water kept rising, covering the small hills and then the taller hills. People who had laughed at Noah were now filled with fear. They ran to higher ground, but the water followed them. The great ark, which had been sitting on dry land, began to float. It lifted up on the rising water, rocking gently at first and then tossing on the growing waves. Soon, the floodwaters covered everything. The whole world became one big, giant ocean. The water was so deep that it covered the tops of the very highest mountains. Everything on the dry land that had the breath of life in it died. All the people who had not listened to God's warning were gone. All the animals that were not safe inside the ark were gone too. The only place of safety in the entire world was inside the floating ark. Noah, his family, and all the animals with them were kept safe from the storm, protected by the strong wooden walls and God's promise. The world had been washed clean. For many long months the ark floated on the endless water. The rain had stopped after 40 days and 40 nights, but the water was still everywhere. There was nothing to see outside but water and sky. Inside the ark, life went on. Noah and his family were very busy every single day. They had a huge job to do, taking care of all the animals. They had to feed them, give them water, and clean their stalls. Imagine waking up every morning to the sounds of hundreds of animals asking for their breakfast. It was hard work, but they did it together as a family. Life inside the ark was probably dark and noisy. There was only one window high up in the roof, so not much light came in. The sounds of the animals echoed through the 3 decks. The gentle rocking of the ark on the water was a constant reminder that they were floating on a giant ocean. Day after day, it was the same routine. Wake up, feed the animals, clean, eat, and sleep. They had to have great patience. They did not know when the water would go away. They had to trust that God, who had saved them from the flood, had not forgotten them. They waited in faith for God's plan to unfold. The Bible tells us that the water covered the earth for a total of 150 days. That is about 5 months. During this long time, Noah and his family would have talked together, prayed together, and supported each other. It must have been difficult to be in a small enclosed space for so long. They could not go outside for a walk or feel the sun on their faces. They lived by the dim light of lamps and the single window. Their whole world was the wooden walls of the ark. Their survival depended on their hard work, their cooperation, and most of all, their unwavering trust in God's promise to keep them safe. Then God remembered Noah and all the animals with him in the ark. He sent a wind to blow over the earth and the waters began to go down. This was the first sign of hope. The water did not disappear overnight. It was a very slow process. Little by little, day by day, the water level started to drop. The gushing springs from the deep were closed, and the heavy rain from the sky had stopped. The ark, which had been floating freely, eventually came to rest on the top of a mountain range called Ararat. They were still inside, but they were no longer drifting. They were on solid ground, even if it was at the top of a mountain. Even though the ark had stopped moving, Noah and his family could not just open the door and walk out. They were on top of a mountain, and the world below was still covered in water. They had to wait for a long time for the water to recede enough for the land to dry out. After many more weeks, Noah decided to see if there was any dry land nearby. He opened the window of the ark and sent out a bird. The first bird he sent was a raven. The raven flew back and forth, going out and coming back because it could eat things that were floating on the water. It didn't give Noah the answer he needed. So, a little while later, Noah tried again. This time, he sent out a different kind of bird, a dove. A dove is a bird that needs a dry place to land and build its nest. Noah sent the dove out, but it could not find any place to rest its feet. The water still covered everything. So the dove flew back to the ark, and Noah reached out his hand and brought it back inside. This told Noah that it was not yet time. He had to be patient and wait some more. He waited for another 7 days inside the big, quiet ark. After a week had passed, Noah sent the dove out for a second time. The dove flew away, and it was gone for most of the day. Noah and his family must have watched the sky, waiting for its return. Just as evening was coming, the dove flew back to the ark. And this time, Noah saw something wonderful. In the dove's beak was a freshly picked olive leaf. This was fantastic news. It meant that the water had gone down enough for the tops of the trees to be showing. It meant that new life was beginning to grow again on the earth. There was dry land somewhere not too far away. Noah's heart was filled with joy and hope. Still, he knew he had to be patient. He waited another 7 days. Then, he sent the dove out one last time. This time, the dove did not come back. It had found a dry place to live and build a nest. This was the final sign Noah needed. He now knew for sure that the earth was drying out, and it would soon be safe to leave the ark. After being inside the ark for more than a year, the long wait was almost over. A new, clean world was waiting for them. After Noah received the good news from the dove, he carefully removed the covering of the ark and looked out. He saw that the ground was dry. A whole new world was waiting for him and his family. Then, God spoke to Noah again. He said, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." The time had finally come to step out into the fresh, clean air. So Noah opened the great door of the ark. He and his family walked down the ramp and stepped onto the dry ground for the first time in over a year. The sun felt warm on their faces. The air smelled fresh and clean. Then, all the animals came out of the ark. They came out in their pairs, blinking in the bright sunlight. The birds flew up into the sky, singing their songs. The other animals ran and leaped and explored their new world. The earth was quiet and empty, but it was ready for a new beginning. Noah, his family, and the animals were the start of all new life on the earth. The very first thing Noah did was build an altar to thank God. He wanted to show God how grateful he was for keeping them safe through the terrible flood. He made a special offering to God to honor him. God was pleased with Noah's thankful heart. He saw that Noah still loved and respected him after everything that had happened. God made a promise not just to Noah but to all people and all living things for all time. He promised that he would never again destroy the whole earth with a flood. He would never again send water to cover all of life. To seal this important promise, God put a beautiful sign in the sky for everyone to see. He said, "I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my promise." So now, whenever we see a beautiful rainbow stretching across the sky after it rains, we can remember God's promise. It is a timeless reminder of faith, survival, a new beginning, and God's everlasting love and faithfulness to His creation.